Good morning, friends. It's Saturday, and I'm back with chapter 35 of my upcoming book, Campaign at Fort Stix. Now it's time to grab a snack, dim the lights, and let me take you into the mists of time with a story I call Sharpshooter. I admit it, I was having a very hard time paying attention in class. But it was not my fault, really. Looking out the window from my seat in the classroom, I cast my gaze in the direction of the thick woods at the edge of the playground. The trees were budding, and there were even some smaller leaves already forming. Birds flitted about, and the occasional squirrel could be seen bouncing branch to branch, going wherever squirrels go. It was a lively pre-spring view out that window. But that's not what I saw. I was seeing silver coho salmon streaking through the water as they fought to be free, until finally being landed with a net and added to the stringer. You see, last week a much-anticipated annual event called Ice Out happened, and it meant the beginning of early spring fishing for coho salmon. My dad got home at normal time Friday night, carrying boxes of hot fish and chips. As we sat in the dining room having dinner, he informed my mother that we would be going to the northern Indiana docks in the morning in search of coho salmon. He pulled a small paper bag from his pocket and emptied it on the table. There were about a dozen new silver fishing spoons in different patterns. Each had a new razor-sharp hook and a ring at the opposite end for tying onto a line. My heart was racing as I went to bed. It was time to go after coho salmon, and I was already ready to go. Sleep did not come easily, and I'm pretty sure I must have checked my alarm at least twice an hour all night to make sure it would go off. When it did finally sound off, I was up like a shot and dressed before the echo of the sound was silenced in the house. I made a hot pot of coffee for my dad and ate quickly so I would have time to feed and water the birds before we left. Lake Michigan was very calm as we walked along the beach from the parking lot to the breakwaters. Looking out into the gently rolling surf, I saw several pairs of large lake trout spawning in the shallows. They were easily in casting distance, but we did not stop. We were here for coho salmon. Standing at the edge of the dock, I cast my lure out into the lake and counted down as it sank before starting to retrieve it. I varied the count with each cast until finally I had a strike and found myself fighting a beautiful coho salmon. The feeling you get when you are slowly reeling in a lure and it's suddenly grabbed by a fish is exciting. It was landed before long as my dad netted it for me, and as soon as it was on the stringer, I was back at it. It was a very good day, and we brought home a nice stringer of fish. The bell rang announcing it was time for lunch, but it did not register until I heard someone calling my name. "Kevin," Tommy said. "Come on, it's lunchtime." I turned my head and looked at him blankly for a moment, until the meaning of his spoken words deciphered themselves in my head. It was like waking from a dream. "Oh yeah," I said, getting up. "I'm starved, man. I hope they're serving something good today." We followed the others to the cafeteria and took our place in line. Tommy and I had become friends not long after the failed gunpowder incident. He had approached me the next day at lunch and explained that I had not added saltpeter to the powder to make it work. I was surprised he knew how to make black powder as well, and found out he hunted with his dad too. We both laughed when I told him about finding the saltpeter in my pocket on the way home, and he was impressed that I had thought to keep it there for safety. We also talked about my problem with Wayne, the rogue. Tommy said Wayne was 2 grades ahead of him when he started school, and had actually been in his older brother's class until he failed out 2 years in a row. He was supposed to be in the 8th grade this year. I said it made sense why he was always mad. I'd be mad too if I was held back in grade school when I was supposed to be in junior high. I lost track of Tommy when we were released to go to the playground for lunch recess. I figured he had to use the restroom and continued on outside with everyone else. Scanning the playground for Wayne and his minions, I saw them headed off to the trees and relaxed. They would not be bothering me today. I turned my face to the sunshine and relished the warmth. Spring had finally begun to arrive. I looked around to see what we would be doing today. Since I was busy daydreaming and learning when we were in class, I had no idea. Unlike my classmates, who used their time effectively conspiring what we would be doing at recess. Usually, by the time I figured out what we were doing, recess was over and I missed out. On this day, I was having a particularly hard time figuring out what we were doing. I think it was a game of Avoid the Nerd, and I was the nerd. I turned to look at the inside corner of the building near the door and saw a group of intelligent-looking lads shooting marbles. They were not your average rough-and-tumble boys, but rather a more mild-mannered bunch. The kind of guys you expect to see playing chess or backgammon. Not too far from them, the teacher on lunch monitor duty watched quietly. She would look away occasionally to scan the playground before returning her gaze to the group kneeling in the grass around a small dirt patch. My tactical assessment of the area revealed relative safety. Should any of Wayne's group return from the woods unnoticed, they would have to come past her to get to that area. I sauntered over and stood to the outside of a small group of spectators, watching for a bit. The tick of marbles meeting was invigorating as they ricocheted in the dirt. At the end of the round, the victor dropped his 5 marbles into the ring and waited for 3 more challengers to follow suit. When all 4 were ready, he knuckled down and made his first shot. I watched as a new victor emerged, and then the school bell rang to indicate time to return to class. The new victor bagged up his marbles and strode from the area proudly. Congratulations were offered, and for a moment, he was the champion. I liked this game. It was something I felt I could excel at, and decided to make sure I was part of that group tomorrow. Sitting in class, I forgot all about coho salmon as I made plans to join in the marble game. I only had a few marbles at home, but I did still have a nice bit of birthday money left. I would go to the drugstore on my bike after school and buy a bag of marbles. I looked at the clock and the countdown began. There was adventure in the making. When the bell rang, I jumped up and ran out of the classroom with everyone else. I was eager to get home and jump on my bike. I had to get ready for the next day and a game of marbles. As I left the front door of the school headed for my bus, I heard a low grumbling just ahead and off to the side. "Hey, smart mouth, where you think you're going?" I looked up to see Wayne and a couple of his friends stopping out in front of me. I had not even considered he would try to mess with me since I was so preoccupied. I also did not feel the normal spike of adrenaline which usually accompanied one of these encounters. Instead, I just felt annoyed. "I don't have time for you today, Wayne," I said and kept walking toward the bus. "You're going to make some time," he growled and grabbed me by the shoulder. "I feel like pounding you." I spun around and roughly grabbed his hand from my shoulder, throwing it down away from me. Looking him dead in the eye, I said as steadily as I could, "You better leave me alone, Wayne." "Or what?" he laughed. "What are you going to do?" Chalk it up to a rebellious mean streak somewhere deep inside, or maybe just plain stupidity. I don't know. But without even thinking, I blurted out the first thing that came to mind. "I'm going to pass 6th grade and go off to junior high school while you stay here being a bully to the little kids again next year." Wayne did not know how to react to that, and it actually left him speechless. His buddies, though, thought that it was hilarious and began to laugh loudly as I turned back toward the bus. "Shut up, you guys," Wayne growled at his friends as I climbed onto the bus. Sitting down in my seat, I let out a long breath and breathed in slowly. If they had decided to jump me, I could not have done anything as I was surrounded. I would have had to fight and take my lumps unless someone else interceded. I looked out the corner of my eye and saw Wayne getting on his bus. He was not even looking my way. As quickly as it had happened, the incident with Wayne was forgotten as my mind returned to thoughts of marbles. The bus ride was over before I knew it, and I was walking to the house with my little brother. Normally, we would walk on past our driveway and stop and visit Grandma after school for milk and cookies, but today I headed straight home. "Hey, why are you going that way?" Mark asked, standing by the mailbox. "Grandma's is this way." "I got something I need to do today," I said without stopping. "You go on ahead and tell Grandma I'll see her tomorrow after school." When I got home, I went to my room and quickly changed out of my school clothes before Mom could tell me to, and headed out to get my chores done. After feeding and watering the birds, I took a few minutes to get nuzzled by the ducks before searching for eggs. There were only a couple of duck eggs, but the chickens had a bunch. I gathered them up in a big bowl and carried them into the house, where I put them in the refrigerator. Sitting on the couch in my front porch room, I opened the cabinet and pulled out the third drawer. It held a collection of stuff I gathered over time, like skeleton keys, bottle caps, and of course, marbles. I grabbed a couple of the marbles and looked them over. They were the proper size, but they were much nicer than the marbles I saw the guys playing with at school. These marbles were special, as each one had been carefully harvested from a paint spray can. No, I would not risk losing these marbles in a game. I got out the dark jar where I kept my money and counted out a couple dollars in coins. I knew marbles would not be expensive, and I wanted to make sure to have enough to buy a candy bar also. Tucking the money in my pocket, I went outside and grabbed my bike. I saw Mark walking up the hill to the house as I was leaving, and he stopped to watch me go. I made the trip to the drugstore and back in good time. I was even back before Dad got home from work. Sitting in my room, I poured the marbles out in a pan and looked at them. There were 25 marbles of normal size and one large shooter. The shooter was a glass cat's eye, and it was much nicer looking than the ones I saw the others using. I knew immediately that they would try to win my shooter, as I heard them say shooters were up for grabs. Getting into my drawer again, I took out a big steel marble, the same size as my shooter. It was much heavier than the glass marble, but I knew this was good as it would impart a lot of energy on impact. I added it to the bag with no fear of losing it, since I had a dozen of them collected from an old tractor bearing I had disassembled. Steel bearings were easy to find when you worked with car parts a lot like I did. If someone won my cat's eye, I would be able to win it back. I was ready. Standing in the ring of onlookers, I watched as the first group of boys lined up to decide who would shoot first. This was done by lagging, a contest where a line was drawn in the sand and each shooter took his turn flicking a marble to see who could get the closest to the line without going over from about 10 feet away. It reminded me of my days in the trailer court in Portage. Each morning before school, we would gather at the little store and office up front to wait for the school bus. On cold days, we would wait inside the laundromat, but most days we wandered around until someone called out the bus was here. One of our pastimes was pitching coins. We would line up at the back of the store at the loading dock and pitch coins to the wall to see who could get the closest. The coins varied with whatever everyone had, but our favorites was quarters. Winning a round of pitching quarters could elevate one from having only 25 cents to a couple dollars quickly, depending on how many were playing. I did not always win, but was successful enough that I did not shy away from the game. The first round of marbles ended, and the winner called out for 3 more challengers. Taking a deep breath, I stepped forward as I untied my marble bag from my belt loop. They looked at me for a moment, and then the winner spoke up. "I've never seen you play before," he said, grinning. "Do you know how to play?" I had read the rules that came inside the bag of marbles the night before, and was pretty sure I had a good handle on them, especially after watching them play and seeing the rules in action. I knew you had to have at least one knuckle touching the ground when you shot, or you lost your turn. The first shot must be made from outside the ring, and thereafter from wherever the shooter marble stopped. The idea was to knock marbles out of the ring until it was empty of all but shooters, although a shooter knocked from the ring not only became a prize, but ended the game for that player. "Yeah, I think I know well enough," I said. "Okay, go ahead and drop your 5, he said, and then looked to the others with a grin. "You know we're playing for keepsies and shooters are up for grabs." Okay, I said with less confidence than I felt. "I guess that's fine." The others laughed and started to kneel by the ring. Since I was to the right of the winner, I would be shooting last. I knew they saw me as an easy mark, who they thought would be easy to beat, but that was okay. When my turn came around, I heard several oohs and ahs as I lined up my cat's eye to shoot. I could almost see them drooling over my shoulder. There were not as many marbles inside the ring now. Though we started with 20 in the ring, there were only 6 or 8 left close to the middle and surrounded by shooters. I knew it would be hard to knock a shooter out from that distance, but a smaller marble was possible. I carefully lined up my first shot and flicked. My cat's eye sailed true and knocked one of the marbles skittering towards the edge of the ring and out to become a prize. I picked up the marble and looked at my shooter. It rested right in the middle of the ring, surrounded by the remaining marbles. I positioned myself and aimed the shooter again. As I was about to shoot, I remembered what my dad had told me when playing pool at the bar about setting up the next shot. He said, "Not only hit what you're shooting at, but try to leave the cue ball in a good place for the next shot." I aimed at the nearest marble and adjusted so I would hit just off center to make my shooter go off in that direction. If my plan worked, I would be lined up for another easy shot. I let go and was pleased to see another marble fly out of the ring, and my shooter crashed into another shooter, sending it closer to the outside ring. The next few shots took a single marble each time and kept my shooter close to the center for easy shooting. It was down to the wire. The teacher announced recess would end in less than 5 minutes. There was only one marble left in the ring, and it was close to the center, but my shooter was toward the outside, close to the other shooter. Looking close at it, I knew I could knock the other shooter out, but my shooter would be too far away to possibly get the last marble and win the game. If I shot the shooter straight out, my shooter would be outside the ring. I weighed the options. If I tried for the last marble and missed, I would surely lose the game because the other shooters were much closer except for one. If I took the other shooter, I would get another shot but still be too far away. Then I had an idea. Instead of shooting the shooter straight on, I could graze it and send my shooter back toward the center. It was worth a try. I shot quickly, knowing we were nearing the end of recess. The other shooter rolled out of the ring, becoming my prize, and my shooter rolled much closer to the center of the ring. I quickly grabbed up my prize and lined up my shot on the last marble. I flicked and watched a satisfying impact that sent the last marble skittering towards the edge of the ring, where it stopped, just inside. "Ha!" the previous winner said. He reached for his shooter, lined up, and knocked the last marble from the ring. He grabbed his prize and shooter before stuffing them in his bag and standing to be congratulated. I shook his hand, agreeing he played a fine game, and bagged my marbles. I started with 5 marbles and a shooter, and was walking away with 7 marbles and 2 shooters. The bell rang as the others grabbed their shooters and we headed for class. I put the wand, shooter, and other marbles into a gallon-glass jar when I got home from school that afternoon. The next day, I made sure to be at the marble ring before the others so I would be included in the lagging contest. I won second turn and was thus in the first round of marbles for that day. The previous winner brought out a nice-looking agate marble for his shooter, otherwise known as an Aggie. These are a little heavier than glass marbles, and I knew this was an effort to win my cat's eye. I was not worried, though, as I had my Steely in reserve. True to form, he worked to win my cat's eye during the first game. This proved to be his downfall, as he gave up easier shots at other marbles in order to try for it. It also left his shooter close to the outside of the ring after his turn, close to my cat's eye. Looking at his Aggie sitting so close to my cat's eye, I knew what I had to do. The cat's eye is lighter than the Aggie and would not move it as much, but it would deflect from it even more than from a glass marble. I lined up and shot the Aggie from the ring. The resulting bounce to my marble sent it into the center of the ring where I had multiple easy shots ready. At the end of the round, I was in possession of the majority of the marbles and 2 shooters, including his Aggie. The final shootout between me and the remaining shooter resulted in my first win. When I went in from recess that day, I found there were too many marbles to fit in my sack. Therefore, I had to shove them in my pockets. I was wearing corduroys and was uncomfortable all afternoon with my bulging pockets. Emptying my winnings into the glass jar that evening, I was pleased. I was getting quite the collection already. For the next several weeks, I spent every recess at the ring playing marbles. Sometimes I won, sometimes I lost, but even when I lost, I went home with at least a couple of prize marbles. The jar filled quickly, and soon there were 2 full jars with a third filling daily. During the time I was playing marbles with the other boys, I was not bothered at all by Wayne. I knew this was in part due to the protective barrier the teacher by the door provided, but even after school he did not impede my travel to the bus. I still talked with Kenny in art class, but Wayne did not intrude on this either. When I did stop to realize it occasionally, it felt strange, like a part of life as I knew it was missing. I liked it. This continued right up until baseball season, when suddenly marble season was over. One day I was playing marbles at lunch, and the next I was standing there wondering why everyone was out in the field. My glory was short-lived, but for a few minutes in the sun, I was one of the marble champions. I was a sharpshooter. I hope you enjoyed this look into the campaign at Fort Stix. That's all for now, but I'll be back again next week with another story, just for you. Until then, sleep well.